And joining us now on the debate, Shabir Ali, Imam and President at the Islamic Information and Dawah Center International. Alice McLaughlin, Assistant Professor in the Department of Philosophy at York University. Nada Tsonic, Spiritual Counselor at the Manresa Jesuit Spiritual Renewal Center. And Jordan Peterson, Professor of Psychology at the University of Toronto and an Agenda Insight essayist. Great to have you all around the table. And Alice, first time for you here. Nice to have you here finally. All right, you know on this program we like to quote the great philosophers, Plato, Aristotle, particularly for a discussion like this. So today, in that fine tradition, here's Louis C.K. Roll tape.
Now we live in an amazing, amazing world, and it's wasted on the crappiest generation of just spoiled idiots that don't care, because this is what people are like now. They got their phone, and they're like, it won't. Give it a second. It's going to space. Can you give it a second to get back from space? Is the speed of light too slow for you? Yeah. I was on an airplane, and there was internet, high-speed internet on the airplane. That's the newest thing that I know exists. And I'm sitting on the plane, and they go, open up your laptop, you can go on the internet. And it's fast, and I'm watching YouTube clips. I'm in an airplane. And then it breaks down. And they apologize, the internet's not working. The guy next to me goes, this is bull. Like, how quickly the world owes him something he knew existed only 10 seconds ago.
Right. Okay, Jordan Peterson, get us started on this. Fair to say that the more we have, the less grateful we are?
Well, I think that's true in some ways, because I think in order to be properly grateful, you have to understand what it would be like to be suffering and deprived. Because otherwise, you think that the normal state of affairs is that things work. And that's not the normal state of affairs. It's amazing that anything complex ever works. And the fact that so many complex things work around us is really, in a sense, it's miraculous. But if things work, you ignore them.
Louis says that actually in that sketch. He goes on to say, planes take off and land every day in this world, 99.9% of the time, right on. And we don't care.
Yeah. Well, we're wired to look for things that produce anxiety.
We're wired that way, aren't we?
Yeah. We're much more sensitive to negative emotion, for example, than to positive emotion. Even so, you'd be more unhappy if I took away your glass of water than you would be happy if I gave you one.
Okay. Imam, fair to say that we are less grateful when we have more?
Yes, I think we fail to balance the two different levels of thinking. On the one hand, we need to have ambition, and that should drive us to always look for improvement. On the other hand, we need to be grateful and thankful for whatever we have achieved and what we have already been granted and given. So if we don't keep these two things separate, then we end up in confusion. On the one hand, someone can say, well, just be happy with the way things are, which means we don't have to work for improvement. And on the other hand, someone can be so ambitious and be driven by this need and desire for greater and better things that he or she loses sight of the need to be thankful and grateful for the gifts that we already enjoy.
Alice, why do you suppose it is? And that was a great indication in that sketch there by Louis C.K. Why do you think that we are not more in awe of the technology around us that has enabled most of us to live lives that would have been unimaginable 50 years ago?
Well, it's a good question, isn't it? And what I love about the clip in particular is it gets at how sad it is that we're not grateful, that we're missing out on something. Gratitude is an antidote to boredom. When you're not grateful, it's like you're not looking out the car window. And I think we have this, I can't speak to how we're wired, but I think there's this sense that we move too quickly from the fact that things are a certain way to the idea that they ought to be that way, that somehow this is preordained, or there's a sense of entitlement, that the world was brought to this very moment and designed such that I can pick up my cell phone and learn about tragedies in the Red Sox or something like that. So there's this strange sense of design for me.
I haven't gotten over it yet, even though it's Thanksgiving. You're a Sox fan too?
Yeah.
I feel your pain. Yeah.
It's hard.
It is. Nada, where are you coming from on that? All of this technology around us. We can watch those Red Sox games anywhere in the world, online, and yet we don't seem to be all that grateful for it.
We can be, but if you're in an attitude of anxiety or control, then you can't feel grateful. You have to be in an open, receptive mood. And often, if you've got a lot of technology, you have a lot of choices, you have to worry a lot about anxiety, which is why I don't like to use a lot of technology, say in the classroom or when giving talks, simply because it's so distracting. And then I have a goal. It's got to be perfect. And when you're working that hard, you can't appreciate what's happening, and you're not open to spontaneity. And gratitude is a spontaneous emotion.
Gratitude is spontaneous.
Yes.
Meaning what? It cannot be planned ahead of time?
It can't be controlled and manipulated. You can feel you ought to be grateful. Somebody gives you a gift with the intention that you be grateful. But in fact, if someone gives you something and it doesn't please you, it isn't what you want, you can't produce the feeling. You know, and the feeling is just there. If someone touches you with a kindness, you don't have to tell yourself, they were kind to me, I must be grateful. You are just grateful.
You're just grateful. Well, let's consider the implications of that, Jordan, on this Thanksgiving Day. Your fellow psychologists have studied this stuff, the connection between gratitude and good health. What have they found?
Well, they found that people who are grateful basically have better personalities, which of course could be reversed. It may be that people with better personalities are more grateful. But they've also found connections between people's self-report of their levels of gratitude and their self-report of their levels of health. And so, but again, there's a bit of a causal problem there, right? Because maybe healthy people are more grateful. You could derive from the literature so far the idea that being grateful probably helps you. It helps you get along with people. It decreases your stress levels. It's a good thing. So I wouldn't say that's conclusive yet, though.
Would you say it's a better way to live?
Well, I think it depends what you mean by better. I've certainly heard much of what Jordan talks about in the psychology of gratitude. I sometimes worry about the ethics of gratitude, and this sounds strange. Well, you know, we think that it's a good thing to be grateful. It gives you an appreciation for what you have. It balances negative feelings. But I think there's at least two ways in which gratitude can go wrong. One is that there can be misplaced gratitude. Some people, I think, are too grateful, excessively grateful, or grateful for the wrong things. You see this in abusive or controlling relationships, where gratitude and the demand for gratitude can be a very effective vehicle of control. Think about situations, cycles of domestic violence, for example. The other way in which I worry about gratitude going wrong is I think we can treat things as gifts when they're not given to us. I think if we are grateful for a privilege we have or a gain we have that is taken from someone else, and you know, on Thanksgiving Day, that's something to think about, being grateful for a history that may include theft, we are implying that we are affirming the way things are as how they ought to be, that it's right, this has been given to us, when it may well be at the expense of someone else. So better is a complicated word.
It is, isn't it? Yeah. Well, does religion make a connection between gratitude and good health?
I don't see that the connection has been made in the sacred scriptures, but definitely the teaching that we are to maintain the attitude of gratitude and to give thanks to God and to fellow human beings is a very key component of the great scriptures of the world's religions. We see this in Judaism, in Christianity, in Hinduism, Buddhism, in Islam. And in the Islamic teaching, every prescription that is given by God is for the betterment of humankind in general. So we can conclude that the prescription that we show gratitude and that we give thanks is for our betterment, whether this be betterment in terms of health and in terms of well-being in this world, and definitely in terms of well-being and everlasting happiness in the life to come.
Nada, at your spiritual center, do you note a connection between those who are particularly grateful and those who happen to enjoy good health as well?
Oh, yes. Well, I think health on all levels. I mean, I would worry about people who say, oh, I must be grateful in order to have better health, because the whole point about gratitude is that it goes along with the humility, where you understand what you can do and what you can't. And the minute people start controlling and manipulating prayer or gratitude in order to psych themselves into something, then we're back into the attitude of control. And that's antithetical to true gratitude and good health.
There's probably nothing to be more grateful for than good health. Is that fair to say?
Peace. Peace is good.
Peace is good and unobtainable.
Well,
health.
you can try to obtain it domestically. I mean, you can work towards attaining it, and I think you can also practice a grateful attitude, even though you may not be able to produce it on demand. But I also think, I've been thinking a lot about gratitude recently because of this show, and I think that to be truly grateful, you also have to have a profound sense of like both horror and terror, because you really need to understand how badly things can go wrong at every level of being to appreciate how unbelievable it is that they're not going wrong right at this second, you know, because you can be in ill health, your family can be dysfunctional, plus people in it can be in ill health, you can be in a corrupt and dangerous society. And you can be all of those three things all at once, with the whole thing getting worse. And that state actually exists probably for about 25% of the people on the planet. And so it's not rare. And the fact that things are so good here, you have to see that in relationship to how they could be before you can be continually amazed and grateful about how they are.
Let's explore this idea, this connection between good health and gratitude a little more. We've got another piece of tape we want to play, and then Alice, I'm going to come back with a question for you. Michael, if you would, roll tape.
Gratitude journaling is the simple process of writing down what you have to be thankful for. But making it a daily habit can transform your life in less than 30 days, and all it takes is a pen, a notebook, and 5 minutes of your time. Gratitude journaling works because it raises the energetic frequency of your being. Everything in the universe is energy, including you. But what you might not realize is that the higher your vibration, the better you feel. And there's no better way to elevate your vibration than to focus on feelings of gratitude.
How do you like the music? Anyway, gratitude journaling. What do we think?
So I don't know much about my vibrations or anyone else's.
Are they good?
They feel all right at the moment. But I do like the idea of gratitude journaling. We've talked a lot about gratitude as a spontaneous attitude, but I also like the idea that it can be practiced. And I think thinking about gratitude as a practice brings in some of the other elements that people have referred to. The need to balance gratitude with a sense of wonder and awe, a way in which gratitude, in saying I am grateful for something, I'm grateful for my health or the weather or my opportunities, reminds you that they are there. So it can be a way of returning to perspective and putting things that are important back in the right kind of perspective. And I think whether you have very little or very much to be grateful for, that can be an important practice in and of itself.
At the risk of using an adjective that she doesn't like, do you think you live a better life if at the end of every day you write down 5 good things that you have to be grateful for today?
Yes, if you're genuinely grateful for them. And that's because, though gratitude is a grace, you have to be open to it. You have to be aware of the good things that are happening. And when people say nothing good happened to me today, it means they're focused exclusively on the bad things that happened. And you have to cultivate attention. And it's a spiritual practice, I think, in every religion and philosophy and spiritual lifestyle, to cultivate an attention to the positive and to goodness.
I got another piece of video I'm going to play. And Imam, you get the first shot at this one. Okay, Michael, next piece of tape if you would. Let's roll it.
I will read you a couple little quick entries. Number 3, on May 14th, 2010, getting frozen custard with my dad, Ezra, that's my little boy, and Jared, my cousin. Another one, the beautiful red rocks in southern Utah, May 9th, sending my mom tulips, eating Merit scones even though they aren't healthy. My new hypnosis CD. Ezra falling asleep in his car seat. Recognizing something that I'm really struggling with.
Now, this is clearly not the euphoria of the Red Sox winning the World Series in 2004 and 2007. This is the little things of everyday life. What's the significance of recording those things in terms of showing gratitude?
Well, it's important that we do take notice of the little things that make us happy, and to give thanks to the great source of all of the little and big things, including life itself, which people may not appreciate. But when Muslims wake up in the morning, they're taught to offer a prayer, which basically means, praise be to God, who has caused me to be alive after I was basically dead. So sleep is thought to be the sister of death. I don't want to put a blanket of a bad feeling on this show, but when we think about life itself, we enjoy a new lease on life every day. And this itself we need to give thanks for. But we need to give thanks for both the big things and the little things. And the great scriptures of the world religions do teach us to continually give thanks. In Paul's letter to the Thessalonians in chapter 5, he says, continue to give thanks to God in all things. And this is a message that needs to be the center of our focus. And if people are neglecting prayer, which is a way of giving thanks to God, then definitely keeping a gratitude journal is a way of reliving and being conscious of the little things. But the two can go together. You can keep a journal and also pray about it.
I'm going to come back to that angle later about if people are neglecting prayer, then maybe they need to do this as well. That's an interesting angle we'll come back to. We talked about Louis C.K., one of the world's great philosophers, off the top. Let's do another one of the world's great thinkers and philosophers. Here's Oprah Winfrey, who became a very strong advocate of practicing gratitude, and she said, be thankful for what you have, you'll end up having more. If you concentrate on what you don't have, you will never, ever have enough. What's the importance, go ahead, Alice, what's the importance of the approach, or what do you make of the approach to render as very important, showing gratitude?
Well, I mean, Oprah's an interesting figure when it comes to gratitude. She has done so much to change the way so many people look at their lives and look at the world, and that can't be underestimated. On the other hand, when you're thinking about having more or having less, it's hard not to recognize that Oprah is an incredibly powerful media figure and someone who has rather a lot, and who is also famous for giving away material things and using this as a way to generate excitement. And I mean, I think part of her fame and her popularity comes from this strange mixture of preaching a very ethical or spiritual approach to gratitude while demonstrating a very material one. And I think there's a bit that doesn't always sit well together. I don't know. I tend to be empirical about these things. I don't know if people who are more grateful end up having more and people, but I do know that people who aren't grateful and can only see things in terms of the negative will certainly feel like they have less. And if you think about which way seems like more fun for being in the world, the grateful approach, it just seems like a better way to be.
Is it easier, Jordan, to appreciate the beauty of a flower when they've just given you a free car? That's the way they do it on Oprah.
No, I would say probably it makes it harder to appreciate the beauty of the flower. With regards to Oprah's comments, I mean, she actually is, in a sense, misquoting Matthew. There's a very famous quote in the Gospel of Matthew, and the quote is, to those who have everything, more will be given, and from those who have nothing, everything will be taken away. And that's a viciously nasty quote in many ways, but it actually happens to be true economically. And we see that, for example, in the fact that wealth concentrates in the hands of very, very few people across societies. So does artistic production. And it's the very small number of people in each domain who produce most of that domain. Now, you might ask yourself why that is. Well, we don't know. But one possible reason is that if you're grateful, people invite you to do things. So if you're working with someone on a team, say, and you spread the credit for it quite generously and you're desperately happy to be there and it's genuine, the probability that you'll be invited to play that game again is pretty high. And that seems to actually work exponentially instead of linearly. So as you get better and better at doing things, and I think part of that is the attitude that you bring from them, the number of opportunities that you have to do them does open up unbelievably rapidly.
What's your thought on that, Nada? The Oprah philosophy.
Well, again, like Alice, I have my doubts about this. You will have more. You will feel like you have more, and the question is, what is the more? The spiritual practice is, as Shabir said, to be grateful for all things. And I'm currently translating the work of a Trappist monk who was killed in Algeria. And he wrote a final testament, which was opened after he died, in which he thanks everyone in his life, including his friend of the last minutes who will kill him. And because he fully expects to die at extremists' hands. Actually, it's probably the counter-terrorists, not the terrorists, who killed him. But he knows he will die a violent death, and he thanks the person. Now, that is at the opposite end, in a sense, but in another sense, no. Because his practice of gratitude is to be grateful for his life, for the entirety of his life, and to accept it, and to be open to the value of everything that happens, and to see it in a context in which it all furthers him, all contributes to what he can be and what the world can be.
Let me follow up on that, because there are people, Imam, watching this program right now who are in very bad health, for example, who may think on this Thanksgiving, I don't really have a lot to be grateful for because I'm in such physical pain, emotional anguish, fill in the blank, however you like. Is it right for all of us to expect them to be grateful?
Yes and no. On the one hand, to continue with what we've been saying and not contradict ourselves, yes, everyone has something to be grateful for, life to begin with. Let's say we think about our own level of consciousness and our level of existence and compare that with the existence of, let's say, a worm. And if we observe a worm happily going about its daily activities in its own environment to which it is perfectly adapted and the environment is suited for the worm's own existence, if we even improve it and make it better so that the worm is free of all encumbrances and any possible danger, yet if we ask a person who is in some level of suffering, would you want to trade places with the worm? I think most people will say no, and that is a recognition that life is dear to us. As much as we cling on to life, we recognize its greatness and its value. Of course, some people may have suffered so much that the balance has been tipped, and they're thinking of the other way, and they're thinking that life is meaningless, I'd rather be dead. But that is so few and exceptional that, for the most part, we should be grateful for life. But then let's think about the exception, and this is the no part of my answer. The Prophet Muhammad is reported to have said that the case of the believer is amazing in that if good comes to him or her, they give thanks, and in that case, it's credited to them. And if bad comes to them, they are patient, and that too is credited to them. So for such a person, we can say, be patient, and that too will be for your everlasting well-being, the very patience that you exercise in such a situation.
How about, Jordan, when we are walking down the street and we see a very obviously homeless person on the street who looks awful, is having a horrible time, maybe has all of their worldly possessions in a shopping cart. Is it appropriate for us to look at that person and express gratitude that we are not them?
I would say often not, because you don't know that much about them, and it may also be the case that you don't know that much about yourself. I mean, I've met some people who were in pretty dire straits and who would look, say, homeless on initial glance, who were engaged in some pretty remarkable moral activities. I mean, really quite shocking, you know. So I knew one woman, for example, who looked like a street person and had a terrible life. She was one of these people you were describing. And one of the things she did was go to the Douglas Hospital in Montreal, where the inpatients were only the patients who couldn't be released. And she would take them for walks.
Of her own accord?
Yes.
Not because anybody told her to?
No.
She didn't have a job? This is what she did?
No, she didn't have a job. Her aunt was ill and lived at home with her. Her boyfriend was a schizophrenic alcoholic, and he used to plague her about being possessed demonically. She was so shy that she would come up to you like this because she couldn't stand looking at you. I mean, she was not attractive, she was not educated, she wasn't intelligent. I mean, this woman didn't have any of the things that the person in your description would be grateful for. But
she did this one thing.
Yeah, well, and she got the idea because she took her dog for a walk, and she liked her dog a lot, hey? And then she thought, well, you know, maybe I could take some of these other people for a walk, and they'd like that, and they'd like being with the dog. And that really, I tell you, that blew me away. It really did, because I couldn't believe that. It showed me what people talk about when they talk about sainthood and its lack of relationship to the sort of obvious positive qualities that we value in our society. Like this woman had a moral strength that was independent of her worldly position to a degree that was, well,
Okay, but that
memorable.
Understood. But that having been said, Alice, is it still okay for us, in spite of the heroic nature of that story, is it still okay for us, particularly on this Thanksgiving, to look at that person and say, you know what, I'm still grateful I'm not that person?
Well, I mean, you're not going to like this. Partly, I want to agree with Jordan. I think that part of this, the way you're framing the situation, part of it is a question of ignorance. It's very easy for us to look at lives that are very different from ours through the lens of, say, a position of being able-bodied, being able-minded, or being sort of cognitively normative, being having a certain amount of class or money, and to think a life that different from mine must be terrible, without doing enough work to find out that it is. But pain and suffering are real. So the question is, if you look at someone who's in a tremendous amount of pain and suffering and deprivation, can you think, I'm grateful it's not me? And, you know, I think literature's most famously grateful character is a children's book, Pollyanna. And even Pollyanna holds back from this. At one point, she's always going around asking people in her small town to be grateful for things or to be happy about things. And even she backs off from being happy that someone else is sick and not her. And I think there's something very distressing about the idea, even though it's true. If we were presented with the two lives, one with pain and suffering and one without, we would pick the one without. But we feel that to stand from the position of having that life and be grateful that someone else must take on the suffering is also at the same time to affirm it, to say it's right that I should have this and they don't. This is the way the world should be. And that's distasteful because that seems to suggest you have earned it or you deserve it. And that's very much the opposite of gratitude, or the opposite of the spirit of gratitude.
Okay, in our last 10 minutes here, I want to return to the thought that you posed earlier in the program. And we will discuss the big question of the evening, which is, does being grateful presume that there is a someone to whom we should be grateful for all of the wonderful things that we see around us? And here is what, Imam, you're not going to like this, but what the heck. Here's Richard Dawkins, one of the world's most famous atheists, who says on the subject, when I lie on my back and look up at the Milky Way on a clear night and see the vast distances of space and reflect that these are also vast differences of time as well, when I look at the Grand Canyon and see the strata going down, down, down through periods of time which the human mind can't comprehend, it's a feeling of sort of an abstract gratitude that I am alive to appreciate these wonders. When I look down a microscope, it's the same feeling. I am grateful to be alive to appreciate these wonders. Okay, let's get into this. Nada, you first, and then we'll go over to the Imam after that. Is it possible to be grateful without there being anybody, namely God, to be grateful to?
I think gratitude, one is always grateful to someone for something. So it presumes what Martin Buber would call an I-thou relationship. If you're grateful, you're in an I-thou relationship as he is with the universe, say the natural world. And that's different from an I-it relationship, where I use something and I control it and it serves me. I'm not grateful to the glass for containing water. I may be grateful that the glass has water, that someone has given me water. So when we're talking about, I can be grateful to you for something you've done or how you've been to me, who is he grateful to? Well, he's grateful to the mystery. And religious people say that when they're grateful for life, they're not grateful, they are grateful to their parents, but their parents aren't the creators of life. So life is a bigger thing. And you're talking with a mystery. You're having an I-thou relationship with a thou that you can't know, define, understand, and certainly not control in the way that you can experience another human being. So I don't think when we get into that level, I know certain people have written to say Dawkins has no right to be grateful because he has no God.
He doesn't believe.
He doesn't believe, but he doesn't have a named God. He resents the definitions, and he gets, very excitable about how other people have defined. And I agree with some of his objections, for sure. But that doesn't matter. He's in an I-thou relationship. He's in you have to be in an attitude of humility. When we were talking about, is it right to say, I'm grateful that I'm not you? Well, that's arrogant. I'm judging your life, and the cause of unhappiness and the antonym of gratitude and humility is not poverty or deprivation or which of us is better off. It's that judgment.
Lack
I
of
judge.
respect.
Yeah, it's a lack of respect, and it's a presuming that you can judge the value, the ultimate value of external things.
Okay, Shabir Ali, will you weigh in on that?
Well,
are you a man
actually-
of religion, Shabir? I think you are.
Yes,
You can-
and actually I love the quotation because though coming from an atheist, it actually points to our need to appreciate the great things in life, which we know could not have come here by just mere chance. When we speak of gratitude as he speaks, then we often think of someone deliberately or intentionally giving us the thing for which we are grateful. And if somebody has so much money that he's walking along the street and $100 bills are falling out from his pockets as he walks, and we pick up those $100 bills, we don't rush after him to thank him, sir, thank you very much for this $100 bill, because he didn't intend to give it to us. He just has so much he's just going about. When we see the Grand Canyon or whatever it is that is so breathtaking and beautiful, we have to really reflect on who has really created all of this to give us that sense of beauty, to cater for our aesthetic needs as well. Brandon Carter in 1974 proposed the anthropic principle, which basically holds that right from the inception, the universe was programmed to create sentient beings like ourselves who would appreciate the beauty of the universe. The Quran speaks about the beauty in things as one of the gifts of God as well, and for which we need to be thankful.
Jordan, it's been calculated that the chances of intelligent life emerging are ridiculously low, less than 0.01% over 4 billion years. It's a miracle we're here. Can we be grateful for the uniqueness of our earthly existence without anybody having willed it?
Well, let's look at this Dawkins situation again here. I mean, Dawkins is a funny guy because he has a lot of religious emotions, you know, and he also has a lot of religious thinking. But on top of that, there's this sort of cynical Enlightenment rationalism that's always in battle with it. And this quote that he gave is a good example of that, because he's experiencing, in a sense, what's a primary social emotion. Human beings are social animals. And he's experiencing that in relationship to the world, to the cosmos, as if it's a creature. And I would say what he's experiencing is one of the primary impulses that gave rise to the religious sentiment to begin with. You know, it's as if there's someone who's produced this for us. Now, the degree to which that as if is true, well, religious people debate that. I mean, it's a standard axiom in the Old Testament, for example, among the Old Testament Jews, that you're not supposed to name God. You leave him as a mysterious, although somewhat personified abstraction, because then your relationship isn't defined. But it allows you to experience things like gratitude. And it is a miracle that we're here. And it doesn't look like, as far as we've been able to tell, that there are other sentient beings. And I've read mathematical calculations of how long it would take sentient beings to populate a galaxy if they existed. It's not as long as you'd think. It's on the order of about 1 million years. So there are 4,000 1 million year periods where sentient beings could have colonized our galaxy, and they haven't.
So by that yardstick, we ought not, I mean, it should have happened by now, is what you're
Well,
saying.
you know, if it's there, there's a
Yeah.
1 in 4,000 chance that it, you know, that it would have already happened, or that it hasn't happened. So that does seem like a miracle, and I think it is a primary impulse in some sense to be grateful for it. And I can't explain that, but it's hard to dispute.
Should we be grateful? Can we be grateful for what surrounds us without being grateful to God?
Yes, absolutely. I feel this very strongly. In fact, the only thing I would take issue with in what Jordan said was, I think calling it religious sentiment, it actually begs the question against the atheist, to assume that sentiments like that are religious. I think that awe and wonder and mystery and a sense of sort of bewilderment and relief and gratitude that we are here to see all these wonders of the universe can be experienced by anyone, whether you attribute all of that to an agency or an intention or not. I mean,
Well, for Dawkins, it's science.
it can be anything. And in fact, I think the atheist has a bit of at least one edge over the religious person, in that I think an atheist's gratitude for existence is likely to be more humble, Because if you believe that the existence was put there for you as a child of God, there is a sense in which someone very smart and very powerful values you enough to make existence for you. And that's sort of a vote in your favor. But the atheist has to look at the universe and think, I get to enjoy this, and it's just a coincidence. It's just chance that it turns out to be me. And I can't imagine anything more humbling than that feeling, that sense that it just happened to be me, and look at this canyon, look at this sky.
I have a feeling somebody wants to take you on that. Go ahead.
Well, not so I mean, in a debate sort of mode, but just to think about the ideas. To me, the feeling is the same. We have a sense of gratitude and the need to thank, but for the person of religion, there is someone to thank. For the atheist, it seems to me that there is no one to thank. And speaking of gratitude in that sense is only in the abstract sense in which we speak about Mother Nature creating the world, whereas we know that there's no such thing as Mother Nature as a personified existent being. It's God, but we find ways in modern times to speak about things that God does without mentioning God. The atheist feeling that sense of gratitude is really feeling the sense of gratitude towards whoever or whatever gave all of this to us. And it's not a mechanical, unwilling or unintentional sort of being. It is an intentional being that gave it to us. And that is at a certain core level being recognized without being expressed.
That's going to be the last word for this Thanksgiving. And I am grateful to you for being here with us tonight to have this discussion. So thank you for coming in. Nadat Sonic and Shabir Ali on one side of the table, Alice McLaughlin and Jordan Peterson on the other side of the table. Thank you, everybody.